Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Scrubbed In Show. I hope you've all been keeping well. This week we have with us another incredible guest. We have with us Gina, Bariah, who is the Global Medical Director at GSK. However, she started off her career as a pharmacist and has somehow managed to work at four of the biggest pharma companies in the world. So we're here to get into her head, figure it all out. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Gina. How are you?
Hello, and thank you for having me.
So you have excelled and done incredibly well in your career, but we really want to take it all the way back to the beginning and kind of work our way up to present day. Tell us a bit more about kind of the motivations to pursue a career in healthcare and pharmacy in particular.
Well, I guess if I was to be honest, my mum played a huge role in my career decision. So she actually said to me to become a pharmacist.
Oh, nice.
And at the time, I think, all of us, when we're 18 and we're kind of 17 and trying to decide what we want to do with our life, it can be super overwhelming. So I just took my mother's advice and I was like, okay, I'll be a pharmacist. I'll do that. So that's kind of how I started my pharmacy journey. And whilst I was at university, my mum also works in hospital. She works in cardiology, and she helped me get some experience within a hospital pharmacy. So whilst I was doing my degree from my first year, I started working in a hospital pharmacy and just learning the ropes, gaining experience, and just kind of supplementing my knowledge from university. So that was kind of how I developed initially and how I ended up in hospital. So because I'd had 4 years of hospital experience before I even finished my degree, it was sort of the natural progression to become a hospital pharmacist. And I guess once I became a hospital pharmacist, I questioned where my career was going, because I'd spent 4 years whilst I was at university working in hospital. I then graduated, did my pre-reg in hospital, then became a fully qualified hospital pharmacist. And I was thinking, wow, I've already done 6 years in hospital. And I was looking for another challenge. I was looking for something different, just anything different. I didn't realize at that point that I wanted to go into the pharmaceutical industry. I just wanted something that was different from the NHS.
You kind of were thinking and taking a step back in terms of where you wanted your career. What were you looking from a career at that point in your journey?
At that point, I was looking for excitement. I was looking for something new, something where I could, that learning curve, be at the steepest point of that learning curve. I just wanted to develop myself in the best possible way. And at that time, I just didn't feel that hospital gave me that opportunity. So I looked into a lot of things, a lot of things which may seem quite random now. So I looked at relocating to Australia and thought that maybe, a different country, different regulations, different ways of working, that might give me that excitement and that kind of learning curve that I was looking for. I also even looked at investment banking, so just completely leaving the pharmacy profession and going into finance. And then I stumbled upon the pharma industry in the sense I knew that I didn't want to go into labs, and I knew I didn't want to go into sales. And those were the only two things that I knew of in the pharma industry. And it was only by luck that I stumbled upon kind of medical affairs and some of the other different things that you could do in pharma. So I decided to start exploring those options, and things like MSL, things like medical advisor. I started becoming more interested in those, and then I guess I thought that maybe the pharmaceutical industry would be the right path for me, and I'm so glad that I found it, because it really has. It has been an amazing career journey. I've had so many great experiences, and I'm glad that I accidentally stumbled upon this career path.
Yeah, which is amazing to hear, and I think a lot of people are in the same boat now as you were then. They are maybe for different reasons, fulfillment, salary, pay, culture, looking for alternative careers and exploring relocating, the corporate world, banking, pharma. Tell us about that transition to your first role, which I believe was a medical advisor at Pfizer. And what I'm keen to hear, as well as our listeners, is how do you go about finding these roles, how do you get through kind of that, the interviews, assessment? Because, as healthcare professionals, we're used to certain things in a certain way. How did that change for you?
So that is a really good question. And I'm not going to lie to you, it took me a really long time to get into industry. It took me over a year, because once I stumbled upon medical affairs and I was like, that's what I want to do. I didn't quite understand what the role was. I didn't quite understand what medical affairs did. I had to look at the job spec and I was like, yeah, I can do that. I know therapy areas. I can do that job. But I didn't really understand what the role was. I didn't really understand what the department did as a whole. I didn't really understand how a pharmaceutical industry operated, even at the very basic levels. So getting into a medical affairs role was incredibly tough. I had a lot of rejections. I had a lot of calls with recruiters saying, you don't have experience, I'm not putting you forward. I had a lot of applications that just I never heard back from. So it was initially quite demoralizing. It was hard to keep getting rejected over and over again. But I was persistent and I tried, and I guess the way that I got in was through networking. And I'm a huge believer that the power of networking is incredible, because it just helps you to get in front of the people that you need to get in front of. So for me, it was actually a family member who knew someone at the recruitment company and made sure that I could at least be put in front of the hiring manager. So, I wasn't rejected at that very first stage of sending my CV in. I actually managed to speak to the hiring manager. And once I was in front of the hiring manager, I could convey my experience, my skills, but most importantly, my personality, in terms of my tenacity, my perseverance, my ability to learn, to adapt, to grow. I also spent some time understanding the ABPI code whilst I was doing all my applications. So whilst I was in front of the hiring manager, I explained how I knew elements of the pharmaceutical industry. I knew the regulations, the things that they had to adhere to. And I was able to instill confidence. She knew that I'd never done the role before, and that it would be a steep learning curve, but she was confident that I'd be able to do it because I was able to instill that confidence. But it was my network that allowed me to get in front of the hiring manager in the first place.
And I think that's incredible, as in you went out, put yourself out there, you learned to kind of, what would look attractive to the hiring manager, what are the things they're looking for, what shows that you've spent time and effort looking into the industry. Tell us a bit more about how people can build this network, because I agree with you, it's probably one of the most powerful things people can do. And LinkedIn and social media, clinicians, healthcare professionals, they don't tend to use it unless they're already kind of building a startup or they're kind of transitioning it out. How important is having a network, and how do people build a network if they, created a LinkedIn profile years ago, I've never posted anything?
Yeah, so like you said, LinkedIn is great. It's great. But what people don't realize is that they have a network already. They have family, they have friends, they have people who know people. So they've got a network to begin with. But if they're really actively looking to move into the pharmaceutical industry, then, one of the things that I've done, because I've recognized how hard it is to make that transition, is I've set up Pharmafinity, and we regularly hold networking events. So this is like time when leaders are actually giving up some of their valuable time to offer support, insight, and be available to people so that they can network and learn from these leaders. And those are fantastic opportunities to build and grow your network. There are other things that people can do. So there are a lot of societies that they can become members of. They tend to be quite expensive, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend them, but they are options. So there's the Medical Affairs Professional Society. There's a whole bunch of other different societies that they can join. It is about putting yourself out there. It's about trying to get into the right circles, trying to make sure you're in the right rooms. But definitely try and check out some of the Pharmafinity ones. They tend to be quite local, like London. And like I said, the people there, so the leaders that come and present, they're only presenting for a short period of time, but the majority of their time they want to talk to people, they want to help people. So yeah.
No, that's incredible. And I agree with you. Networking and having a network doesn't mean kind of the social professional side. Having a network also includes friends and family, which we fail to realize. And if you were to look, you'd be surprised at some of the places your friends and family people work and how much they can help you in that career. You then managed to land this role as a medical advisor at Pfizer. Tell us how it was doing the role. Did it live up to what you thought it would be? Did you feel, that extra motivation and thought, do you know what? Pharma is the place I want to now build my career.
Absolutely. So I remember walking into the Pfizer offices, and there are these, so in Walton Oaks, grand offices, huge offices, beautiful offices with like a canteen, they had a gym, it was just pristine, right? It's not like a hospital.
I can
It
imagine.
was just so immaculate. And I was like, wow, I was just blown away just by the office. And then I had my desk, and I had my team around me, and there was just so many colors in the office, and everything was just really bubbly and bright. And it was just really lovely atmosphere. And you have like these meetings, and the time pressure. Obviously, the people in the company felt that the time pressure was intense, but coming from the NHS, I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is
Weight
it's
lifted
very
off your
relaxed.
shoulders.
It's very
Yeah.
relaxed. Yeah. So initially I was just like, I was blown away by it all. It was just really incredible. They did a lot of team building. They did a lot of investing in their workforce, in their employees. So there was a lot of kind of time to self-reflect and personal growth, as well as looking at your career development. So yeah, it was great. But in terms of the actual work, that came as a bit of a surprise to me, because obviously I'd never done that type of role before. And I was just like, oh, what do I do? And I was kind of given like this blank canvas, because I was asked to come in and develop like a digital MSL project, which they'd never had before. And so I was just like, so it was a complete blank canvas. So not only did I not know what I was doing, nobody knew what I was doing, which I don't know whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, because it meant that I could just kind of do what I think is needed. And I could talk to a lot of people without sounding like I didn't know anything, because no one knew anything. That was quite interesting as well, just talking to people about kind of what they think a digital MSL could do, how it could, enhance the team, what those kind of ways of working would look like. But it was a very gentle transition into kind of picking up all these projects, because initially you do quite a lot of onboarding, and as you do in the NHS, you'll have some mandatory SOPs to read, you'll have a lot of training to do. But unlike the NHS, Pharma kind of, well, depending on the company, depending on the team, depending on the role, you would get like a training week where you kind of just have like this intense upskilling and kind of learning about the therapy area, learning about all the regulations. So you kind of get all of that support at the beginning, and you start understanding who people are. So it's definitely quite steep on the learning curve, but you get a lot of support in being able to deliver and being able to be successful in the role.
Reassuring to hear. There's good real onboarding. As we know, certain hospitals and trusts, you don't really get the onboarding as you'd like to. What advice would you give, having been there and done it, for people that are stepping into that role, let's say next week? What are the hacks? What are the things they can do just so they can hit the floor running?
I get asked this question quite a lot, and it depends. It depends on the company in terms of how big it is, how much, how many other functions there are, what the priorities are. It depends on the product that you're working on. So whether it's, pre-launch, launch, post-launch, about to lose its patent, so LOE. It depends on all of those things, because the types of activities you would do in medical affairs will be different depending on where it is in its life cycle and how much resource you have in a company. So it's quite difficult, I would say, to give any kind of generic advice. I guess the only thing I could say is to understand the priorities, understand what is the priority for your role, for your team, understand who owns which work streams, and then you can begin to negotiate on what you can actually deliver and what you can support with.
I think that's actually quite a sound advice, which applies to a lot of things, not just pharma. You're building this career in Pfizer, which is globally renowned, and everyone would love to kind of build their career there. Why then jump ship? Why then go to MSD? Tell us the rationale, the thought process behind that.
Yeah, so it was for development reasons. So whilst pharmaceutical companies are great for, kind of helping you to develop, there's not always the right role available at the time you want to develop. And so if there isn't, then you'd want to look externally. Well, at least in my case, I wanted to look externally. There are some people who just absolutely, wouldn't want to leave a company, and that's fine as well. You can stay in the same pharmaceutical company for as many years as you want, and you can develop and grow at the pace that you want. But the pace that I wanted wasn't really available to me at Pfizer. So I took a role at MSD, which again allowed me to be at that steeper end of the learning curve, which is where I love to be. That's where I kind of excel and thrive. And that's what I enjoy. I think once it starts getting a little bit shallower, I'm like, oh, I need something else to kind of get me excited and get me motivated. So yeah, MSD allowed that for me.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you really do love to live on the steep part of the curve. So if you were to kind of look at your career, and I think then onwards you started to kind of progress and go into kind of these leadership positions. I'm very interested to hear how you approach leadership, what it means, what are some of the skills that you had to develop, and how do you kind of build that healthy work culture?
I love to support people, right? I mean, that's why I developed Pharma Affinity. I love to help. I like to be able to support people in achieving their ambitions and achieving their goals. So for me, being a leader was just so fulfilling, being able to help people, provide that vision for people to be able to come to me, to ask me for support. That is something that I really love to do. So when I first became a manager, and I had, direct line reports, it was amazing. Working together on their kind of, on their career development, on their objectives for the year, kind of checking in with them regularly every quarter to make sure that they're on track for where they want to be, but also kind of on that day-to-day basis of helping and supporting them with their role and knowing that they can come to me with anything, not just work related, but if they're like, oh, I need to work from home, or I can't work this day, or I'm sick and I don't feel that well, then I want to be able to support. That's something I want to be able to support all of my line reports with, and not just my line reports, anybody that I work with. So I really enjoy the leadership role in that aspect. And I guess that does touch on the culture question. So for me, it is about making sure that people feel fulfilled, that they feel supported, because I think once you're able to deliver on those two things and support your employees and your line reports and your colleagues with feeling fulfilled and feeling supported, then they will want to do more. They will want to do extra. They will have the same vision as you. They'll be on the same journey as you. So it's not going to be a case of trying to convince people to do certain projects and to meet certain deadlines. They're going to be invested in it because it's part of their journey as well. It's we're all going in the same direction together, and that's really important.
No, and I agree with you. And just looking back, it is those supportive leaders where you want to go above and beyond, that you want to help them succeed because they help you succeed. Talking about fulfillment and support, at the back of my head, I'm thinking you're doing all of this career progression, you're climbing the ranks. How were you still balancing motherhood? I don't know if you had kids at the time, but I know a lot of our female listeners will be banging on. And, how do you kind of motherhood, being a partner, as well as this excelling career?
I am going to go back to some advice that my mom gave me when I was, when I was just a child. And she told me, she said, right, work hard now so you don't have to when you're older. And at the time, I was just like, I don't want to work hard now. But
I
I
can
listened
imagine.
to her, right? I did. I listened and I was like, okay, fine. So, I worked really hard, like through my GCSEs, through my A levels. I spent my lunch breaks in the library. I, was working constantly. I said earlier in this podcast that whilst I was at university, I was still working weekends in a hospital pharmacy. I was
Yeah.
still working all the, all of the breaks, the Christmas break, the summer break. All my time was working based on my mom's advice. And, she wasn't wrong by me putting in all of that time, all of that effort early on when I didn't have children and I had the time and I had the energy, I was able to develop my career. So when I was at Pfizer, I still didn't have children. I didn't have children until AstraZeneca. So
Mhm.
there were quite a lot of roles that I was able to do and to just kind of power through and be
Yeah.
at that steep part of the learning curve, because now I'm probably not at a steep part of the learning curve. I've probably become an expert in my field of medical affairs and pharmaceutical compliance. So I can, I'm probably at a very shallow end of a learning curve, but I'm able to do my job effectively and still able to develop and grow. But because I'm at the shallower end of the learning curve, I still have a lot of kind of mental capacity and ability to juggle motherhood. And I'm not saying it's easy, but my mom was right. It's easier,
No.
it's easier because I put the time in at the beginning. I worked incredibly hard. I was working probably 7 days a week for an entire year. It has made things a little bit easier now.
No. That is very good foresight by your mother. The way you talk about your mother is as if you got a very strong relationship, supportive, and a sense of her being a mentor to you just by virtue of life experience that other than age you can't gather. Tell us a bit more about this. You don't need to answer it. It's about your relationship with your mother and mentorship, and if that's something else people should seek. They might not always have a mother that can kind of advise them.
She wasn't career driven or anything like that. Like, her children were her main focus. And I think that's the kind of mother I aspire to be, where
Mm,
I can give my kids the advice and the support that they need to be successful, because I feel like that's what she did for me. She
mm,
was always putting my needs before her own. She would drive me around. She would drive me to school, drive me to work. She would try and give me advice based on her life experience and what's happened to her previously, so that I didn't make the same mistakes. But then if I did make mistakes, she was there to support me and help me to get over those and develop and grow. So she's incredibly supportive. I mean, she's still very supportive and she helps me with my children now. So I don't know what I'd do without her. But in terms of mentorship, like I said, your family is there, friends are there. There are always mentors in every part of your life. It's just kind of being able to see them as mentors, because I don't think everyone would see their mum as a mentor. I actually probably didn't see my mum as a mentor until you just mentioned it now, but she has been kind of like my North Star. She's always able to kind of guide me in the right direction.
yeah. No, I feel like you're someone that can change perception and see things through a different lens and a lens of optimism and kind of channel that in the right direction. Going back to your story, so you were at Pfizer, you then took a more senior role at MSD and then AstraZeneca, where I believe you were a med affairs lead. Um, is that pivot once again to continue staying on the steep part of the curve? And we hear these kind of big terms, leadership, senior. I think as healthcare professionals, we're very driven, especially kind of those type A personalities. How did that role differ, and what were you doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so that role was different. Pharmaceutical companies have different structures.
Mhm,
Um, they have different names for roles that could do similar things. So moving from MSD to AstraZeneca, the role wasn't hugely different in the sense of what I was doing. I was still in medical affairs. I still needed to
mhm.
be able to apply the ABPI code. I still needed to be a signatory. All of those things still applied. It was just a little bit more different in that I don't know actually how to explain it. I think the teams were a lot bigger. So there were a lot more kind of moving parts in who
Yeah.
I needed to support. kind of matrix management, those types of things, but also being involved in a lot of different projects. So the products that I had at MSD were quite established products. They'd been on the market for quite some time. Moving into AstraZeneca, we had, I was working on a launch product. As well. Actually, I was working on multiple products, but one of them was a launch product. So that allowed me to get experience at a different point in a product life cycle. I also was able to work on some pre-launch products, as well as kind of license extensions and all of those other things. So there was, I guess, a greater variety of projects that I could work on at AstraZeneca.
There's one thing you mentioned, I'm just thinking a lot of listeners might be interested in. When a pharma company launches a new product, a new medication, a drug, what does that look like? Because these are insights that people are oblivious to, right? One day you just get told, a rep comes in, there's this new medication. What is happening behind the scenes? Because I'd love to know, even for myself.
A lot. So I guess, the work starts right at the beginning, even at, concept stage. The medical affairs will be working even pre-launch. But I guess you've asked specifically kind of at launch. So I will skip past pre-launch and go to launch. But at launch, you're looking at understanding the environment, the landscape, who your competitors are. You're looking to understand your clinicians in terms of the unmet need. You're looking to understand your patients in terms of their perspective, what they need. You're looking to ensure that first of all, that you're going to get licensed, right? So everything that you're submitting to the regulatory bodies, and then you're looking to get reimbursement. So then you're going to be working quite closely with your market access partners to make sure that your studies are suitable to get reimbursement, to get onto the guidelines, and all of those types of things. So there are a lot of different things that you'll be doing at launch stage, particularly in medical affairs, because you kind of work with almost every department. You work with regulatory, you work with market access, you work with the commercial teams, you work with the sales teams. You'll be developing training material for the sales force. You'll be working on campaign materials for the marketing team. You'll be working on the medical strategy as well. So it's a very, very busy time.
Okay, that's incredible. I can imagine no 2 days are the same, and there's variety. Just because you're in a particular role doesn't mean you're doing the same thing day in, day out, which can happen to kind of the healthcare sector, which is very interesting. At this moment in time, I want to kind of see, were there any setbacks and failures you had having been in pharma a few years? Because, if people to look at your LinkedIn, they'll see kind of this natural career progression. And I know you had that difficulty getting into pharma. Did you face any setbacks while within pharma?
I guess a little bit. So, and this can happen, so when I did get pregnant, I had to take, obviously, maternity leave, but also I was really ill during my pregnancy, so I had to take time off there. And I didn't plan for that, right? I did not plan to be sick during my pregnancy. And I was super ambitious and really career driven. And in my head, I was thinking, right, I can get at least one more promotion before I have to go off on maternity leave. And then whilst I'm on maternity leave, I'll kind of keep checking in. I'll go back in and I'll work really hard and I can get another promotion straight after. I was hoping that I'd be able to keep the momentum. And I wasn't because I was super sick during my pregnancy. And then once I had a baby, that struggle of having to adapt to a new life, of being a parent, of being a mother, of having a whole new identity and losing your old identity because I was no longer kind of Gina, the medical affairs leader. I was a mom, right? And that was my full-time job. That was my job 24/7. So there was all of those things that I was having to deal with, becoming a mom, becoming a parent, going on maternity leave that I didn't fully understand, or I didn't fully prepare for. And I guess that was a setback in my career because that my career aspirations didn't align with how my life was turning out. So I felt like for at least a good, even now, I don't feel as though I'm as, my career trajectory is as quick or as fast or as, is where I would I thought I would be when I was 26, 27. Yeah. I have had to slow down because I've got other priorities, I've got other commitments, and I'm a mum as well as a professional. So yeah, I think that would be my only kind of setback, I would say, that I didn't plan for. And probably quite foolishly so, because, I think seeing my mom, seeing other people being effective parents and being present parents, it's impossible to do it all. You can't, otherwise you'll probably just end up driving yourself into the ground. You'll get exhausted, you'll burn out. So yeah, that's probably my biggest setback, I'd say.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's interesting that the mission and the vision can still be the same. You just may have to reprioritize that order. And being a mum did that for you. Tell us a bit more. And I imagine a lot of people may be thinking, when you are a female, when you are of an ethnic minority, when you are kind of, having to go maternity leave, how does that affect kind of, career progression? Is it frowned upon? And, is it something people should be conscious of or worry about? Or have you kind of been affected by that?
People will say things that aren't particularly helpful. So one of the things that happened to me when I came back from maternity leave and I was looking to kind of move roles and try and get back onto a sort of steeper learning curve was that I probably should focus on my family, which probably wasn't the advice I wanted from somebody in my workplace. Like, I think I would know what I want to do with my time and how I want to use my time. So that wasn't a particularly helpful comment. And then there was other comments about, you probably wouldn't be suitable to apply for the role because you haven't got your finger on the pulse, and those types of things, where by being out of the workforce for a 12-month period on maternity leave, you have effectively stalled your progression opportunities because now people think you don't have your finger on the pulse, and people think that now you just want to spend your whole time with your family.
Yeah.
And I think that is an individual choice. That is the choice of the woman. That is the choice of the man if they're on paternity leave. It's the choice of the individual as to what they want to do. And I don't think those types of comments are particularly helpful, but you can come across them. And I think women do need to be mindful of that. It's unfortunate, particularly in this day and age, but there is still inequality in the workplace. And whilst I think the people or the men that said those comments didn't mean them in a malicious way, there is just still that kind of underlying arrogance, I suppose, because they don't, or ignorance, that they don't know that they shouldn't be saying those things.
And I'm glad I can sense you are like a strong-willed person, persistent, and like, if you set your mind on something, you will go out and get it. You mentioned kind of keeping your fingers on the pulse. There is a lot of development happening in pharma, biotech, health tech, AI, digital health. How do you stay on top of it all? What is the content diet Gina is consuming, right, to stay on top of all of this advancements in the world?
Things are changing. Things are changing at an incredible pace. And honestly, it's kind of my network. It's just the people that I speak to on a daily basis that help me keep abreast of some of these issues. They will kind of say, "Oh, did you hear about X, Y, and Z?" And then I'll, either I'll say yes or no, and they'll fill me in and they'll kind of signpost me. But it is just those constant conversations that help me to stay abreast of things. I don't think there is any one kind of place where I consume content. It's more through organic relationships.
And it goes back to what you said, the importance of having that network, that diverse network across the space, even across sectors, which is super helpful. Going back to your journey, because you've had so many of these pivots, tell us about the move into GSK, where you are now. The titles get longer, the regions are getting better and bigger. Now you're a global medical director. So tell us a bit more about that role and what it kind of entails.
Yeah, so I guess after my second maternity leave, I wanted to find a role that allowed me to balance my work life, right? My work and my life. And I couldn't really find that where I was. And it took me a while because I wasn't looking for a role at GSK. I wasn't looking for a global role. I wasn't looking for a medical director role. I didn't have a role in mind. I just knew that what I wanted was a good balance. I wanted to be able to spend time with my children. I wanted to be able to get some development and growth in my career. So it was actually, again, just luck, really, that role opened up and a recruiter reached out to me. And initially it was a part-time role. So I was like, perfect. That's exactly what I want. I just want to work part-time. Slowly the hours kind of creeped up. I'm doing full-time now. But initially it was part-time, and it worked out perfectly. My youngest was only 8 months old. I was still breastfeeding when I started with GSK. They were super flexible. I was working from home, and it was just, such a wonderful team. They had other women who were kind of part-time workers as well, so job shares.
Oh, nice.
So that they could have a good work-life balance as well. It's just absolutely amazing. It was just really kind of like a forward-thinking team in terms of gender equity, and also just in terms of diversity. Really great team to work for.
No, that sounds incredible, and it feels perfect for kind of the career you wanted to build. Tell us a bit more about the role itself. When you are working in a, let's say in England or the UK versus a global role, doesn't mean you're looking after multiple countries and kind of managing the workforce. What's the differences?
So for me, it's about the strategy. So when you're working in a affiliate, so a local company, so whether that's the UK or Germany or whichever company it is, your strategy that you're developing is for your country. When you're thinking about the medical strategy, you're thinking about it specifically for your country. When you're developing it at a global level, there's an added layer of complexity, because your licenses might be different in different countries, but you're still developing an overall global medical strategy.
I see.
And when you come to approving the strategy, or come to approving materials, if you're approving them for local affiliates to localize, then again, you've got that added complexity, because particularly with UK global companies, so AstraZeneca, GSK, you have to adhere to the ABPI as a global company. So when you're signing things off, you're thinking about the ABPI code, but you're also thinking about the practicalities of the different countries that you're trying to serve. So you're trying to get that balance, right, of what is going to be suitable for all these countries, but in line with the things that we as a global team can do under the ABPI code, and also aligned to some of the direct use things that we want to do at global, so that the campaign and the strategy doesn't vary too much. So there is an added layer of complexity to a global role, particularly if it's a UK-based global role.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. The one thing we didn't talk about, and I'm keen to hear because we're big fans of startups, side hustles. You've got this amazing career in pharma, and yet on the side, you've got this pharma affinity, which is rapidly growing. Tell us a bit more about that. I know your life is busy enough. Why bring on this new startup project?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in my current role, I don't have, I guess, the ability to develop people, and that is something that I love, something that I really enjoy doing, something that I find fulfilling. So one of the reasons I developed Pharma Affinity was to allow me to get that kind of aspect of what I enjoy from my job and from my career. The second reason for developing Pharma Affinity was because, from my own experience, I know how hard it is to move into the pharmaceutical industry. And I know how difficult it can be to develop a career once you're actually in the industry. So I wanted to develop a platform, a support system for people who want to move into the industry, but also for people who are in industry and want to develop their careers. And there have been some fantastic success stories. There are at least 3 people who came along to various Pharma Affinity events, who have been Pharma Affinity members, who have got their first job in pharma. There are even more people who have now, after years and years of not hearing back when they submit their CVs, they're now hearing back. They're now getting to interview stage or second interview stage. So there is a huge proportion of people who are seeing the benefits of the networking, of the mentoring, of just having that support system, which is just so great to see. And every time someone says, "Oh, I've got an interview or I've got a job. It's just such a great
Imagine.
feeling to be able to help them.
When it comes to kind of applying to medical school or dentistry or kind of any other allied healthcare profession, there's so much resources and platforms getting in. Why is it different for pharma? Even for like the corporate world in banking and stuff, I've seen loads of YouTube channels of videos. Is pharma kind of locked off for a particular reason? Is it because the demographic are of a certain type? Keen to hear more about that.
This is probably just my perspective, right? This is just my opinion. But I think one of the reasons why there's not as much information about pharma, particularly for doctors and pharmacists and dentists and all the other allied healthcare professionals and even PhDs, is because a lot of these people are looking for roles in medical affairs, and the function of medical affairs has changed dramatically over the years. Before, medical affairs was probably seen as more of a support function, supporting commercial. They didn't have their own budget. They very rarely had their own strategy. It was very much just supporting commercial. As medical grow, as their expertise grows, as the need for medical information and support and medical education grows, the function of medical affairs is developing. And it's developing every single day. So that may be one of the reasons why there isn't as much resource out there, because actually the role has changed considerably over the years.
Which makes sense. And I'm glad there are people like yourselves that are kind of, not pulling up the ladder as they climb it, right? As the saying goes, and helping other people get into, not even get in, the way it's seen as is break into pharma because it seems so locked up, which is so reassuring to hear. The final question I want to ask is, reflecting back on your journey and all that you've achieved, what is the one thing you're most proud of? And what are you looking in terms of kind of your future goals you want to achieve?
Oh, wow, that is a tough question. So what am I most proud of? I am going to say my children. I am most proud of becoming a mum, right? It is the hardest job. It is the hardest job. I've said that there was a year where I worked 2 jobs. And I worked 7 days a week. What I also failed to mention is during that year, I was doing a postgraduate diploma. I was running for ward councillor. I was getting married and moving house. I was doing all those things in that 1 year. That was easier than becoming a mother.
Oh, wow.
It is absolutely the hardest job in the world. People told me like, oh, enjoy your sleep before you have children because you won't get any sleep once you have them. And I didn't really understand that, right? I was just like, okay, I don't need that much sleep. I need 5 hours. But I'm not going to lie to you. Once you have a baby, and if you're breastfeeding or even, you wake up every 2 hours, every hour and a half is broken sleep for such a long period of time. And that takes a level of kind of, mental focus and physical competence to be able to be a mum. So I would say that is probably my biggest achievement is becoming a mum. And then I guess in terms of my career looking forward, I would say it looks very different to what I thought it would look like. So when I was 26, 27, my ambition was to become a CEO, right? That's where I wanted to go. And I was like, right, my 10-year plan, when I was 27, my 10-year plan included becoming a CEO, right, of a pharma company. That's where I wanted my career to go. And now it's not. It's definitely not that, right? It is about having that work-life balance, making sure that I'm present for my kids, making sure that I can be the kind of mother my mom was to me, and helping them with their life, with their success, with their personal development. That for me is what I want. And as my kids grow up, as I move through different phases of my life, my career ambitions will probably change. And who knows, maybe in a few years, my ambition goes back to wanting to become a CEO. So I think it's a growing, it's always going to develop and change as you go through life.
Oh, wow. That is incredible. No, I can imagine you're a good, fun person to be around, an awesome leader. And I think, being a wonderful mom, having the support network you have is probably what has helped you progress and get to the stage where you are. I feel those are kind of the soft skills you only develop through life's experiences. But no, thank you so much, Gina, for taking the time out to share that. I feel like we covered a lot in a short period of time. So, no, I wish you the best And no doubt, I have a gut feeling we'll be seeing you as a CEO of some big pharma company. But no, I love the fact that you are a mum first, and that's important for you. And your career is just alongside that. So no, absolute pleasure having spoken to you today, Gina.
No, thank you for the invite. It's been lovely.
No, thank you.